Hello. My name is Ani, and welcome to my story. So, 2015 was a really difficult year in my life. I had one of those years I think we all have at some point when everything seems to break at the same time, just kind of falls apart in your hands. For me, it was a relationship, my job, my religion started to take a turn around that time. And more than anything else, it was my understanding of myself, who I was outside of all of those things. So I was desperate for something different, to be somewhere else, to give myself time and space in another place to figure those things out and to return to myself. So the afternoon that I finally got to click book now on a one-way ticket to Florence, Italy, I was so excited and so scared. My plan was that I was going to spend the next 6 to 9 months traveling and farming my way through Europe until I ran out of money. I did end up traveling and farming my way through Europe, but that trip ended when I got kicked out of Ireland, which is a story for another time, so you can find me after. So I was ready. I packed a bag, what turned out to be a regrettably large bag, and I got on my flight. It was me and my mom's vintage REI backpack against the world. So when I landed in Florence, I got on a bus that would take me to a train station that in about another 2 hours' time would take me to a little town called Borgo Val di Taro, where I would be spending my first 2 months working on a dairy farm. And as the bus drove through the city, I could feel a soft and sweet shift already starting to happen inside of me. Just getting to witness a life that was so different from my own. Like looking out the window, I remember kind of peeking into little shops and I could see like piles of leather shoes waiting to be cobbled, and on the corner a waiter was wiping his hands on his apron. It looked like he was giving directions to a couple holding hands. And there's kids running down the street with huge cones of gelato, like licking the drips off of their elbows. And I cried. Just what a privilege it was to be here, to witness a night that was so ordinary here in Florence, but for me it was so extraordinary. When we pulled into the train station, though, the energy shifted immediately. So what was my sort of calm romance on the bus quickly turned into like sharp awareness. So it was about 7:00 p.m., so everyone here was catching their commutes home for the night, and it was just chaos. But the spectrum of characters that was at the station was really perfect. You know, you had like beautiful woman in expensive sneakers smoking cigarettes, and like handsome man in pressed suit, and then me. Just a tired 26-year-old American girl that really wanted to put my bag down. But I was on a mission. I found the ticket counter. I walked up and I proudly said, "I'm going to Borgo Val di Taro, grazie." And the man behind the counter he was more mustache really than he was a man. He slid two tickets across the counter. And as I waited for my train, I looked at my tickets, I studied them, and immediately regretted not having learned any Italian before I took this trip. The 2 words that I did know, ciao and bella, were not on my ticket, but I was hopeful. I got onto the train, I found my seat number, and as I peeled myself out of my bag and started to lift it above my head, above my seat, it became suddenly weightless in my hands. I peered over my shoulder, and standing there was this thin man He had curly brown hair and kind eyes. And he was putting my bag up for me, and he said, "Do you mind can I sit with you? Practice my English?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah." So we sat and we talked. His name was Daniel. I remember that I shared the same name as his mother. And Daniel was from Venice. So Daniel had a long trip ahead of him this night. And he was telling me about Venice. He's like, "It's so beautiful. You have to come. You should come back. Come have a cup of coffee with me." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe. We'll see." So we're talking, and I realized Daniel can translate these tickets for me. So I grab my tickets and I hand them to him, and it's like, "Hey, can you just let me know how I'm doing? Like, am I even going in the right direction?" And he took my tickets, and just then the train kind of started to slow down, and he got a phone call. And he answered it. He says, "Ciao, Bella." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm translating this guy's entire conversation. I should look busy." So I look busy. He continues talking. The train picks back up again. And after a moment, he looks down at my tickets, and his face turns white. And he quickly hangs up the phone, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You were meant to get off at that last stop and make a transfer." So my anxiety sets in. And he's like, "Okay, don't worry about it. The next stop is in about an hour. It's a little town called Ferrara. We'll find you a hostel for the night, and then you can start your return trip tomorrow morning." So I'm frantically calling every hostel that I find on Google. Just no one has a room, no one has a room. Daniel finally finds a room for me, and just as he's finishing writing down the information on a piece of paper for me, the train slows down again. I'm like, "Oh my God, okay, we're here already." I grab my bag, head towards the door. I push the button, and the doors don't open. I'm like, "Oh my God, okay." So I go to the next car over, I push the button, the doors are not opening. Shit. Okay, third car, push the button, doors aren't opening. I'm starting to really freak out, because if I don't get off at this stop here, I'm stuck on this train another 3 hours, and I'm going to Venice tonight. I'm freaking out. Daniel walks through, and he's like, "Hey, come on, let's find someone who works on the train. I'll figure out what's going on, and we'll get it sorted." So we're booking it. We're running through 6, 7, 8 more cars until we finally find someone who works on the train. Daniel and he talk for a few moments, and Daniel finally turns around and looks at me with those kind eyes, and he says, "Okay, so we are, how you say, fucked? Twice." And my heart just sinks. He's like, "So we're not stopping in Ferrara tonight, and the train has stopped here because we ran over someone's body." Yeah, cool, and totally normal. So we're walking back to our seats, and every few minutes, Daniel turns around, and he's like, "Take a deep breath, it's all gonna be totally fine." And I'm thinking, like, it's not fine for the dead guy, but, like, we'll probably be fine. Yeah, we'll be fine. So we sit down, and we wait to hear an announcement. And after a moment, we hear over the loudspeaker, "All passengers need to exit this train and board the local train on the next platform over. This train is experiencing some technical difficulties." So I was going to Venice tonight, after all. So Daniel and I sit together on the train. We chat for the next couple of hours. And when we finally pull into Venice and I leave the train station, I walk out, and there's Venice, like, in all of its history and beauty, and it's got all the things, the canals and the boats and the cobblestone streets. This city that I've heard about my entire life is just laid before me at 1 o'clock in the morning, dark and silent. There's not a soul around. And I sigh, and I look over at Daniel, and he's got his arms thrown wide, and he says, "Welcome to my city. What the hell are you doing here?" But he shows me to the bus, and I get on one final bus for the day to go to my hostel for the night, which is a little tent on the grounds of a place called the Camping Rialto. And I get to my tent, and I take my bag off for the final time that day. And for the first time in over 30 hours of traveling, like planes, buses, a murder train, a slow train to Venice, I have a chance to sleep, and it's absolutely the last thing that I want to do. I want to live in this day forever. This day that I had been waiting for so long, to figure things out, to become known to myself again. And I got to witness life happening all around me in so many different ways, adventure and joy and sweetness and fear. And I felt it all, and I just let it all bounce around inside of me, and it was just for me. I was so, so happy. I had made it to the end of my very first day, and I had some luck and some kindness from a stranger, but I did it by myself. I cried myself to sleep that night, so proud, feeling so alive. And I just couldn't wait for tomorrow because I got to be with myself again, I got to meet myself again, and I got to do it all over again. Thanks.